Evet sevgili Disket Kutusu takipçileri, bugün alışık olmadığınız bir içerikle karşınızdayım. Şu anda Jason Schreier karşımızda. Kendisi dünyada belki oyun gazeteciliği payesi verilecekse bu payı alabilecek sayılı insanlardan biri. Çünkü oyun firmalarındaki çalışanlara karşı yapılan yanlışları açık ediyor. Yani bu konuda bir hub haline gelmiş durumda kendisi. Aynı zamanda Türkiye'de de 3 ay önce ilk kitabı Türkçe olarak piyasaya çıktı. Kan, Ter ve Piksel'den İtaki Yayıncılık'tan İhsan Tatari'nin müthiş çevirisiyle çıktı. Ve inanılmaz bir kitap. Baştan sona ben nefes almadan okudum. Eğer satın almak isterseniz aşağıdaki açıklamadaki linkten satın alabilirsiniz. Röportajın bundan sonrası İngilizce gidecek. Altyazı hazırlayacağız Jason'la röportajımıza. Aşağıdan, sağ alttan Türkçe altyazıları açmanız gerekiyor eğer İngilizce izlemek istemiyorsanız. Yes, Jason, welcome and thank you for taking your time for this interview.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Could you a little bit introduce yourself, where you come from, and can you talk about your first book, Blood, Tears and Pixels?
Yeah, sure. I'm a reporter in the video game industry. I report on the video game industry. I've been doing it for about 12 years here in New York, in the U.S. So a little bit far away from you guys, but
Yes.
But it's still good to be here and talking to you all. In 2017, I published a book called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels that just came out in Turkish last year, which is really exciting. It seems to be doing well there, which makes me really happy.
It's giving great reviews, great reception.
Great. Awesome to hear. And I even heard that our Turkish publisher might be interested in my newest book, which would also be great to have that come out in Turkey too. But so Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, it's a book about how video games are made. And I said, when I started writing it, I kind of wanted to answer the question, why is it so difficult to make video games? And so I went around and I talked to a bunch of people who make games and put together these stories. And the way I structured it was every chapter in the book tells a different story about a different game. So it starts off with Pillars of Eternity and then gets into other bigger games, Uncharted, Diablo, Destiny, a bunch of games. It's 10 games overall. It seems like people have really enjoyed it, which is great to hear. And I'm really glad that we could reach the Turkish audience. I know there are a lot of gamers that video games have gotten increasingly big in Turkey. So that's really cool to see.
The game development community is growing exponentially in Turkey. We had some great exits, and in the last year, maybe Zynga bought had 3 major buyouts in Turkey. They bought Peak Games for $1.8 billion. And they followed up with Rolik Games. They bought 80% share for $163 million, I think. So the game development structure in Turkey is enlarging. So we want to build a healthy work environment for this community. As a 20-year gaming journalist, as I have a 3-year-old startup called Fiber Games. We are developing mobile games also. We found ourselves in a curious situation. We are getting reports. Even though we are mobile game developers, we are still in touch with our journalistic side, and we are getting reports from some inside some companies that resemble what you have been complaining in all your reports, in all your book, and these malpractices towards the workers of game development companies in Turkey. We want them to learn that it's the right way. There's a right way and there's a wrong way they can follow. So what was the reaction from companies and game industry workers to your first book? Because I'm sure some people call you a whistleblower, but you are not, you are just the connection points of all the whistleblowers in those companies. And these companies we are talking about are huge pioneers of gaming industry in the whole world. So what was the reactions after your first book?
Yeah, I got a large variety of reactions from different people. I think it's becoming more and more clear to people who work in games that this isn't a healthy way to go about it. That crunching and putting in all the extra hours and excessive overtime, usually unpaid, is just not a healthy way to run things. And actually, my next book explores a lot of those topics and explores why people burn out as a video game industry as well.
I'm saying press reset in the background. Right there.
Yeah, I put it up. I gotta show it off in the background.
Yeah, of course.
So I got a lot of mixed reactions. It's interesting. Some people reading the book were like, wow, this is so inspirational. Now I really want to make games. Other people were like, wow, I never would make video games, seeing how the sausage is made. I think within the video game industry, I mean, it wasn't, Bloodstone Pixels didn't come as a surprise to anybody. Everybody kind of knew, oh yes, this is the way in which games are made. But I think that hopefully it opened a few eyes, and hopefully it convinces a few people that this is not the best way to go about things.
Did you get any backlash from the companies that you unearthed the malpractices of? I watched your 2-year-old interview with Yongia, and you said that still Bethesda is not talking to me.
Yes, that's true.
Is it still continuing?
Yes, Bethesda still has not talked to me since 2013. They've been blacklisting me and Kotaku as well, but a former outlet. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of usually companies are more subtle about the way that they kind of freeze journalists out. Bethesda is the only one that just refuses to talk. Other companies are just more frosty and maybe won't offer the same things to someone like me as they would to other outlets, or like in terms of games and interviews and stuff like that, executive interviews, that sort of thing. Usually it's more subtle.
Yeah, I remember one time that we unexpectedly leaked the latest Total War game before pre-E3. They sent an Excel sheet for the interviews, and they were written Total War 2, which was not announced at that time. So we, in that excitement, tweeted about it. Total War 2 is coming. So they banned us from that and consecutive E3s, but it's mostly 2 years for something like that. That means this 8-year blacklisting, you are taken as a very serious force in gaming and gaming journalism. So could you talk about your second book, upcoming book, Press Reset?
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about it? It's kind of a little bit darker mood than your first book, I think, because it's about what happens after gaming companies dissolves.
Yes, yeah. So with Press Reset, which hopefully it comes out in English on May 11th, so people there who can read it in English can check it out then, and hopefully it comes out in Turkish soon. I don't know though; we don't have a deal just yet, but hopefully in the near future.
We will push Itaki for
that. please do. Yes, tell them everybody wants it and try to get it, because I love it when the book comes out in other languages and it can reach other people who don't speak English well or don't read English well. So when I set out to write Press Reset, my goal was to try to figure out why is the video game industry so bad at like treating its workers properly. Like why do so many people burn out? Why do so many people find it impossible to have a sustainable career in the video game industry? And I wound up compiling stories about game studios shutting down and what happens to people after that. For example, Irrational Games, which made BioShock, shut down in 2014. And so the book tells the story of what happened there, how it shut down, why it shut down, and then goes on to follow people and follows some of the people who were affected and says, hey, what happened to you afterwards? And tells their stories. And it's called Ruin and Recovery in the Video Game Industry because it has stories of both people who burnt out and said, screw it, I'm out, I'm leaving the video game industry entirely, and also people who bounced back after these studio shutdowns and did their own great things. So yeah, it's got a large variety of stories, but the overall thesis is that this is an industry that like really needs to change in some significant ways. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen.
That's a big issue, I think, because I love gaming. I can't place another hobby of mine near it. But from what I have seen in the past 10, 12 years, it's going downhill, and it's mostly fueled with the malpractices of the companies, plus the advent of social media and the toxicity of the people that are playing. What do you think fuels this player toxicity? What's the reason of this toxicity rampant in game industry? How can the industry overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. There's a lot of factors at play there when it comes to toxicity in the video game industry. There's a lot of it is just like people not being, I mean, some gamers just aren't good at interacting with people and they kind of escape in video games and they take out a lot of aggression in really unhealthy ways. Some people are just, I think there's a lot of entitlement in the video game community that's kind of like egged on by game companies. Game companies like create this atmosphere where everything is all about the fans and kind of encourage fans to believe that everything revolves around them. There's just a lot of potential factors there, and unfortunately, game companies have not done a great job of controlling that.
Can we really overcome it, though? Do you think any situation that we find a balance between this toxicity and the well-being of the game companies and the people that make those games? Because I am seeing more and more people that gets that threats, that are disillusioned with the industry, and they outright leave the industry to look for other job opportunities. I've been thinking about it, but I can't come up with a solution. I can't even come up with where to begin with it, because gamers love to create silos. They create silos of company haters. They create silos of gender haters. They create silos of console haters and fans. How can we overcome this? I don't have a quick and deployable solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature. Tribalism is part of human nature. This idea of like creating a factions, and anyone who doesn't belong to your team is one of the bad guys. We see that a lot, and it takes a lot of different forms in the video game world. And yeah, it's tough. I think a lot of the game companies just need to be doing a better job of policing that sort of thing and moderating and creating healthier environments for people. And some of them are trying, but I think they could be doing a better job.
Yeah, and it's not just on the players' shoulders. I think companies also fuel this player attachment to their IPs, and they use it. In the news, we saw how much Cyberpunk got bashed because what they were doing for the past 7 years. They wouldn't be bashed if they just announced the game 4 years ago and came up to this exact points. I don't think they would be, but they made people so entitled, so attached to their view of Cyberpunk, what Cyberpunk would be. People got furious, and I can understand that kind of backlash. It's also on the companies, but it's not on the people that are doing the games. It's on the people that aren't in the companies, the CEOs, the advertisement departments, the marketing departments, and they have to step back a bit from what they are doing on the games. Mm-hmm. And that concerns me because, as I said, our local industry is becoming more corporate with acquisitions and competition for market share. As a journalist, as we know it, you are mostly working on stories like corporate exploitation and employee rights. What would be your recommendation for a growing industry like Turkey in order to avoid these kinds of frictions between companies, employees, and gamers? What do you think the right way for a healthy growth?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the problems of the U.S. Video game industry is that games companies don't have unions, and I'm not familiar with labor laws in Turkey and how unions work in Turkey, but here in the U.S.,
it's a disaster. I may confess, it's a disaster.
Yes, yeah, similar here, similar in the United States, but I think that a lot of people are looking around and saying, wait a minute, you look at Hollywood, you look at the movie industry, and one of the reasons that they've been able to guarantee certain rights for their workers is that they do have unions in place, and maybe the video game industry should do the same. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important for, in any game, any healthy game company, but any healthy company in general, for workers to have some sort of seat at the table. I think that's really important. And I'm not advocating that like every worker should have an equal say to the bosses or anything like that, although maybe that could be, in an ideal world, maybe everyone could have more of a voice. But I do think there needs to be a world where every decision is not being made unilaterally from the very top and then trickling down. It needs to be a world where there's a little bit of a discussion where instead of the boss saying, hey, we're all working an 80-hour week, the boss says, okay, employees, let's discuss this. What are some solutions we can make going forward? What are some compromises we can make? What are some kind of deal? What's a deal we could strike here that creates a fair solution for everybody? And just having that voice is really important. And that's one of the advantages of unionization, is that it gives workers a seat at the table.
So you are saying unionization is the way to solve these problems, but what do you think NGOs can be beneficial or helpful for employee rights in gaming companies? Is it a viable solution for solving these kinds of malpractices?
I'm actually not sure. I'm not familiar with NGOs. I don't think they're common.
Non-profit companies that are not unions.
Sorry, I should be. I know what an NGO is, but I don't think they're common in the United States. So I haven't really seen what a structure of NGOs in the games industry.
They are very common in Turkey, but some of them lean into the government, some of them go to far left, but none of them work as you'd expect them. For the workers, that's a problem in the Middle East, I think, or East Europe also. So that's something we ourselves would have to solve. What type of gamer are you? I'm just trying to finish the dark topics about. What type of gamer are you? Which games do you prefer? You told me you are playing Bravely Default right now.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a kid, I just recently moved to a new place, and I got a bunch of boxes of my old games from my parents' house because my old games were sitting at my parents' house, and so I grabbed them and I started unpacking them, and I was going on like this nostalgia trip, looking at my old games. And it's funny, when I was growing up, I was pretty much only into RPGs. That's like all I would play was on the PlayStation, RPGs. And I still love RPGs, but I've expanded more. And these days I play everything. I actually feel like it's really useful as a journalist covering the video game industry to be familiar with all the different genres and all the different types of games and just play as much as you can. So that's what I try to do these days, is just experiment and try everything I possibly can. So I don't really have a type anymore, although I guess I'm still partial to JRPGs.
But how can you find time? I have so much backlog that I'm drowning about just thinking about it. I will never have time even if I retire, an early retirement will not fix that backlog. That's a big problem for me.
Yep, you and everybody else. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. Um, One thing I do, I mean, I'm lucky because I'm able to get a lot of these games from the companies. They'll send me codes and stuff like that, so I don't have to buy everything. And then so but one of my strategies is just to not worry about finishing things. Like I'll be happy to just stop playing something if I'm not into it. So that helps me try as much as possible. Um, but yeah, it's tough.
About your upcoming book, Press Reset, do you
Mhm.
have any inside information from Eastern companies, for example, Japan? I am. I've never seen anything blow up from Japan because of their work ethic, work culture. But I am, for, uh, for example, very curious about uh, what happened between Hideo Kojima and Konami divorce. And
Mhm.
there's very little information about that issue. And I think if something like that happened in a Western company, the bells of doom would ring within that company. But Hideo Kojima doesn't talk about it. Konami would never talk about it. And two very beloved franchises just dangle in the air: Silent Hill and Metal
Mhm.
Gear Solid. Did you have any information regarding that dispute between Hideo Kojima and Konami?
No, so I think when it comes to Japan, I haven't been able to talk to many Japanese developers. Unfortunately, I think there are two issues for me, at least. One is a language barrier, which is an obvious one. I don't speak Japanese. But the second, I think this is a bigger one, which is a cultural barrier. I think in Japan, it's very much you're very much discouraged from speaking out and complaining to journalists. I don't think it would even occur to a lot of folks who work at Japanese companies to go and complain to a journalist. But yeah, I unfortunately have not had the same visibility into Eastern companies as I have here in the West. I mean, it's also a location thing. It's harder to just get in touch with people there than it is here, and yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah.
My last question. Do you have any recommendation for fast growing companies and fast growing game development countries like Turkey? How to handle about employee satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I think unions are a very useful tool when it comes to like making sure everyone
Mhm.
has a voice, has a seat at the table. um yeah, I mean, I think that like just not crunching your workers, making sure they're paid fairly, making sure that they're treated well, I think can go a long way towards keeping people satisfied.
The what, what is the most complaint you get from all the backlash from workers? Is it the crunch? Is it their psychological situation not being considered by the company, or is it the underpayment situation, or both, a combination of them?
All of the above, the
Mhm. All.
volatility. Yeah, it's there's a lot of problems. Volatility, sexism, racism, underpay, crunch, overwork. It's just all of the above. Unfortunately, um, I think the biggest issue might be just the giant wealth disparity between the people at the very top, the Bobby Koticks of the world, and the people below them, that are just making sometimes not even enough to live on. I think that is one of the biggest issues, maybe the biggest issue, is that there's a ton of money in the video game industry, and it's all going to a very small group of people on the very top instead of the people who actually make games.
You got the word out of my mouth. I'm very shocked to see in 2 consecutive years they are announcing that they are letting go more than 100 people
Hmm.
in Blizzard, and in the same day they are announcing the bonus that Bobby Kotick gets. I
Hmm.
don't know what kind of decision making to give those two information to the world, but it just blows up my mind. Bobby Kotick getting millions and millions, 28 million, I think, this year, getting bonus. It's something we got used to living with. It's the same with all these big companies, but announcing them in the same day, I can't find a reasonable explanation for that.
It's pretty wild.
Very, very, very wild. Okay, Jason, I thank you so much for this interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Taking your time.
Of course.
See you soon enough after this whole pandemic
Yes.
is gone. I pray. Okay.
Hope so.
Okay. Disket Kutusu takipçileri, biraz İngilizcemi konuşturmaya çalışırken takılmış olabilirim. Uzun zamandan beri İngilizce konuşmadığımı fark ettim Jason'la konuşurken, ama size de videonun sonuna kadar kalıp izlediğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Bir sonraki videoda görüşmek üzere. Kendinize çok iyi bakın. Görüşürüz. Okay. Jason, I thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. All right, take care.